we're at the end of the season, and I've taken the time to compile 3 of the best political moments on the show. Of course, you can't do a highlight reel without a crazy statement from our current president, Donald Trump. One of the main themes throughout this season was Donald Trump and how Donald Trump communicated his agenda in the Iran war and many other subjects. So it's only fitting to include one of his craziest statements in the conflict. So go ahead, sit back, get some popcorn, and enjoy.
Let's start with some tweets, some posts that are just they're text. They're not going to be videos right now, but these are some things that the first one our president put out that I think we should spend a little time digesting. So here we see a Truth Social post from the president, Donald Trump, and you can expect when this was. This is April 5th. What day is April 5th? Easter Sunday, I believe, right? So let's just put that in perspective when we hear him say this. Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one, in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the effing straight. Sorry, I'm going to edit. You crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump. Okay.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So, I mean, just normal speech of the president. Is this something that you would have heard Biden say or Obama, or what do you think?
I definitely don't think I'd hear this from Biden. I think we'd hear something a little bit more discombobulated and maybe we could understand it. I mean, maybe that was unnecessary, but it's certainly not something that we would expect to hear from our president on Easter Day.
Yeah, I mean, the language is jarring, of course, and his speech of, as you mentioned, telling people to go to hell basically is a little jarring, especially for Easter, and also mocking another religion. I mean, no matter what your religious stance is, he's using this praise to mock them and what they believe, which is pretty uncomfortable.
So when a terrorist comes in to commit a crime, often they use the name of Allah in the commission of that crime. I wonder if he's thinking along those lines here as he's saying praise be to Allah.
On the 444 podcast, we were no strangers to politics. And who better to talk about than Donald Trump himself?
You're going to win bigger than ever. And to prove that point, here with us tonight is a group of winners who just made the entire nation proud. The men's gold medal Olympic hockey team. Come on in.
What's interesting about that specific part is it seems like something he would say normally, but it with the hockey team coming out, it seems like it's a very well rehearsed part of his speech. Whereas it probably wouldn't be well rehearsed part of anyone else's speech, but for Trump's vocabulary, it's very natural to him.
Yes, it is. He has that echoing of himself a lot.
Yeah. But he did kind of frame the entire sports conversation in a somewhat egotistical way. He presented it, he said, I got the World Cup here. I got the, Olympics here. It wasn't a conversation of, I'm so glad and so blessed that America is going to be the host of the World Cup, right? It was, guess who did it? Wink, wink. Okay. Wink, wink. It was,
So let's turn the spotlight on me.
Yeah.
The speech that he took credit for, like that we might sit here and go, but did you really do that? Like getting the Olympics in Los Angeles. Like, does the president do that? Or is like that the people of Los Angeles, like the Olympic Committee of Los Angeles, the governor of California, like what role does the president play?
It's fair to say that Trump kind of does this a lot, where he puts himself at the center of attention by giving all the credit to himself. And to be honest, it comes off a bit egotistical. But a great question was raised on the podcast. What if he's more self-aware of this aspect of his character than we realize?
Under our bill, parents like Megan can also activate their children's brand new Trump accounts. And I didn't name it. I did not name that.
Yeah. So he's kind of responding to an imaginary critic. And I think Trump does that a lot. He's very self-aware. As much as people say, Trump is not aware of what's happening, I think he's very aware, and sometimes he just doesn't care.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, he definitely has a reputation, like an ethos, and he's very much aware of what his ethos is.
Without our stoic host, Zechariah, I'm not sure that any of us would have fully understood the deeper meaning to the gamification of the Iran war. It is somewhat concerning to see how the current administration, at least in my opinion, is gamifying what is so, of course, sad and tragic. But it's very much something that younger people, especially on social media, seem to be enjoying. So it's interesting to see where exactly this will go and if future conflicts of our administrations will pick up on the theme of taking your favorite video games and splicing real footage.
We're winning this fight. We've taken control.
Okay, so I wanted to get up and dance to it, I suppose, to some degree, right? Like you got this very energetic music, but I think there's a lot more than that going on here. And we're going to turn to Zechariah because he seems to identify exactly what the White House is pulling from for this video. Tell us more about that, Zechariah.
All right, yeah. So first off, in Call of Duty, there's these things called score streaks that you call, and then it just helps you out in the game, right? The video that they used is of one that you can only get after you get like 30 kills. And when you call in this specific score streak, it's called the mass guided bombs, you win the game automatically. So like the game's already won the second you call it. And I feel like that's kind of like a peek into I guess America's like worldview, I guess, that they kind of to them the battle was already won. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Okay, so kind of a subtle subliminal messaging, maybe.
Trump at times also addresses his opponents in a manner that could be perceived as unprofessional.
Trump here is claiming that that is fake news. He said, the failing New York Times and fake news CNN each reported a totally fake 10-point plan on the Iran negotiations, which was meant to discredit the people involved in the peace process. All 10 points were made up as a hoax. And then he says, evil losers, make America great again. Was the last part totally necessary? I'm not sure, but
You know, as we said in the beginning, fake news is one of President Trump's favorite things to say and call things out on.
He's
All
trying to highlight the
Democrats,
makers
every
of the bill.
single
So
one
he's
of
kind of
them
being
voted against these
Okay.
really important and very necessary massive tax cuts.
I would say this particular statement is much more divisive.
oh, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Highlighting
They
the people who
wanted
passed it is a little bit different than
large-scale
highlighting the people who
tax
intentionally.
increases to hurt the people
Blocked it, yeah.
instead.
Right.
But I kind of want to pay attention to how he I think he sort of like simplified the issue of the tax cuts and made it like he was trying to frame the Democrats as like evil. He was clearly trying to escalate the situation and just kind of like making them look bad in front of everyone.
I want to talk about, though, one of the most oft addressed parts of this is when Trump basically put out the challenge, like, if you believe this, stand up. And he says to the Democrats, he says, or doesn't say to the Democrats, he says to all of Congress, if you agree that the main job of our government is to protect American citizens rather than illegal aliens, stand up, right?
Mhm.
Right.
And I think he specifically says first priority.
First priority. Okay. Uh-huh. And so then we saw the Republican side stands up and clap forever. and the Democrat side did not. There was some catcalling that was going on. Couldn't understand what was all being said there. So the press has made a big deal of it. How did it strike you young people?
I think it was worded in just the right way so that it should have been a nonpartisan issue. I think whoever his speechwriter is, whoever was talking with him about that, worded it in just the right way so that that first priority, it didn't say that illegal aliens didn't matter. It didn't say that there was no place for them, but that the first priority should be to the American citizens. And so that should be, and even with Democrats, even just 10 years ago, that was a mainline thing that American citizens are the first priority. I mean, we even see that Obama deported plenty of people and was very strict on the border, even just 10 years ago. But now that's no longer a bipartisan issue.
Yeah.
Actually, I agree that it seemed more of like a political statement, like rather than actually affiliated with the question. But then as an American citizen, it kind of makes you look at them and be like, okay, if your first priority is not to protect the American citizen, what is your first priority? And so that's a little tough to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it is no surprise to anyone that Trump has amplified pre-existing partisan divides. Based off everything we've seen, one of the biggest factors for that is probably because of his rhetoric.
There are so many various opinions in our current culture about all types of conflicts, and of course, at the top of them all, the Iran war that's happening right now. We have those that blindly follow our leaders and those that blindly don't follow them. And then, of course, we have those in between that have some type of rationale or metric for determining their own opinions independent of the people at the top. So I think it's only proper to include those clips. Real people were interviewed throughout the podcast, and these short interviews were some of the most impactful in understanding how our culture is responding and thinking about our current conflicts.
I think we want to play a couple sets of these. We'll play the first one, and then we can talk about what people are saying about different aspects of the war.
So, do you think President Trump made the right decision by launching the attack on Iran?
Yes, he did. He's the president of the United States of America, and I'm pretty sure that all of his decisions had plenty reasoning behind it. We just need to stand by as citizens and let our president do what he does.
Okay, so do you think the President Trump made the right decision by launching the attack on Iran?
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Because at that rate, things need to be controlled and managed in such a way as fair for the whole wide world.
Okay. Do you think President Trump made the right decision by launching the attack on Iran?
No,
Why?
because war never helps anything.
Krishna was our interviewee here, or interviewer here, talking to some of these folks. I don't know, what do you think? There's some very different opinions on there.
Yeah, I mean, as usual, the country is divided. I feel like historically, in big major political moments, people are going to have different opinions. But the first opinion was very interesting, just like blindly trusting the president. And then obviously the last opinion was very in opposite to that, very against what President Trump is doing.
The older fella in the middle, he's like, what did he say? Something about it should be fair for everybody?
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
in the world.
Everyone in the world.
Fair outcome for the world.
Fair outcome for the world. Okay. And so it sounded like he was in favor of the war, so he feels like the war will bring that fair outcome. Do you agree with him?
I mean, I feel like I understand and can get behind his rationale more than maybe the other opinions that I heard in the video. His felt pretty well thought out in the sense that he had a goal, right? He had a reason that we would go to war. And his reason was to bring equality or to have even and kind of non-chaotic outcomes throughout the world. And in using his goal or objective for what a war should accomplish, I think he sees that this war does fulfill that goal. The other opinions, they were, either for or against, but they didn't give me like an overarching reason for why they believe that war could be justified in this circumstance. It was just like, yes, I am, or I'm not.
Yeah, yeah. So do you think, so is that characteristic of most people? Do you think most people don't really even know how to think about whether this is good or bad? They just feel like, my party says yes, or my party says no. Like, do people have good rationale? Are they thinking through this?
I mean, the last lady kind of had a moral opinion in just saying that war is always bad,
Okay.
which would be kind of pacifist, technically, of not thinking that war is ever a good thing because there's destruction and there's killing. So I don't know if she would have continued on to like say that, but even subconsciously, she has that opinion.
We would go over a bunch of statements that Trump has made over the last 3 months on our podcast, and we would just kind of give our thoughts and opinions on those as well.
Here's the president claiming that this is a fake news claim that gas prices are high. Does he have any grounds to stand on?
I think in other contexts, the president has kind of clarified or qualified his statements about the prices of gas with kind of the idea that the prices aren't that high if you add the fact that we're trying to depossess nuclear weapons from a foreign adversary. So for a wartime, which is there's no war because war hasn't been declared, but still for a wartime or pseudo wartime, gas prices are really low for what you would expect. I mean, they're low for a wartime. Obviously, the issue is that Americans are not operating under the assumption that we're in a wartime and that we should be expecting all these drastic measures. We just want cheap gas.
We talked about Trump a lot on our podcast, but our focus wasn't always on him.
Yeah, so as you can see from the title, the immigration situation in Minnesota was very volatile. There was an intense conflict there. It resulted in 2 deaths of American citizens, Renee Good and Alex Preddy. So basically, the article polls the locals in that area and asks them, how their perspective of ICE changed as a result of those actions. And specifically, the article associated pollers with their political party, and they connected how polarization towards ICE could be correlated with Democratic Party or Republican Party, I guess.
444 podcast, we also explore the many ways in which journalists decide to frame their coverage of politics and war.
That's interesting. It didn't say more people were for it, more people were against it, just that they're either more against it or more for it than they are in these other places.
I wonder how much of that has to do with the types of information shared as well, because that's been my experience not being a Minnesotan, but taking in all of the information and video breakdowns of what happened to Alex Preddy and what happened to Renee Good, is that you can watch a video that's coming from one side and they have a completely different interpretation of what the exact same video does or is.
Mhm.
They'll slow it down in different parts and say, this is what happened. And then you go to the other side. For example, you go to Fox News and they have a completely different interpretation with different experts, both experts that have gone to college and, do forensic, analysis, both experts on both sides coming to opposite conclusions. So my guess is there are Minnesotans that listen to Fox News and there are Minnesotans that listen to CNN, and they have different interpretations of what happened to Renee Good and what happened to Alex Preddy. And that will be part of, the reason that they're so polarized about what actually happened.
Yeah, but I think stories like this highlight how polarized public opinion already is. So I feel like if you don't have a background on the information, it can lead you to believe whatever it's saying.
Further both Cyrus's and Krishna's thoughts, I think polarization can also come from individual worldviews as well. To some, ICE can represent law and order, but to others it represents government overreach and fear in everyday life. These worldviews can contribute to confirmation bias, where people consume news that aligns with their beliefs. To agree with Krishna, sometimes people have a pre-existing bias, an initial bias, even if they don't know much about a certain subject or topic, and they tend to consume news that more so reinforces those biases instead of opposes them. So I do think that plays a part as well. We also decided to take a look at the Russian-Ukraine war. Journalists play a big part in shaping sentiment towards the war, so we wanted to explore how they decided to frame their reporting.
I think it goes back to their values, and every person has a different set of values that they base these decisions on. Specifically talking about, the Russia-Ukraine war, one might base their journalist decision making off of their values of just war theory, which we were talking about earlier. whether or not that the war is just, whether or not that the individual decisions within the war are just, and that can very much determine what the journalist chooses to write on, but not only that, the tone and the perspective that they offer within that article. Yeah, I definitely think that compromise was sort of off the table here, which I think is a increasingly common occurrence in the media, specifically the media interacting with government. I think the media, it's a thing for them to be considered a watchdog, and I think that the general public doesn't dislike that because with distrust of the government, because there is a separation, there are things that have to be like secret. I think that people, fall back on the watchdog nature of the media as a way to feel more secure or feel more, in tune with what's going on around them.
Again, this is just a quick compilation of the various political topics we talked about on the 444 podcast. But if any of this interests you, feel free to check out a full episode where we usually talk about other aspects of public culture as well, such as faith and pop culture.
So we've been so grateful to have you, as a viewer, watch our podcast as we discuss culture, journalism, and what we should think about all that's happening. So I really do hope that you'll follow along for future seasons, that you'll subscribe, that you'll like, that you'll follow, and stay tuned for what we have coming from the 444.